Okay, good afternoon to Dr. Farzana and all participants from Malaysia, and good morning to all participants from the Middle East and Africa, and Carla, who is based in the UK. It's nice to have people from around 3 regions for this webinar. My name is Rosita G, and I'm the Regional Marketing Manager based in Malaysia. With me online is my team member, Nadine Wadi, who is based in Egypt. And on behalf of Emerald Publishing, we would like to welcome all attendees to the Emerging Markets Case Studies webinar. So welcome everyone. Before we start, let me remind you of some housekeeping. Relevant materials on this webinar will be shared in the post-webinar email, which will be automatically sent by the GoToWebinar system after this session. All participants' audio will be muted at all times during the session. If you have any questions for the speaker, please post it in the question column on your control panel. After our speaker has completed her presentation, I will read out some selected questions and Dr. Farzana will then be invited to respond. Attendance e-certificate and webinar video link along with links to the KCC and Malaysia case competition will be sent 1 day after this webinar. Please note that the attendance e-certificate name follows the registered name and when you register for this session. Now I'm pleased to introduce you to our speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Farzana Quoquab. Before that, let me congratulate Dr. Farzana for her award received yesterday from the Research University, University Technology Malaysia. It is an Excellent Service Award for Index Publication. Heartiest congratulations, Dr. Farzana. So now is Dr. Farzana's biodata. Dr. Farzana is an Associate Professor at Azman Hashim International Business School, UTM, Kuala Lumpur. She has authored and co-authored several books which are published by publishers like Emerald, IGI Global, and Pearson. She has secured many research grants, including the Case Writing Grant Scheme. She is also a prolific case writer. She has published cases in internationally reputed journals such as Asian Case Research Journal, ACRJ, Asian Journal Management Cases, AJMC, by SAGE, and Emerald Emerging Markets Case Study, EMCS. As the contribution to research and publication, she has received several awards such as Excellent Service Award, Faculty Award for Research, Highly Commended Award, Special Award for Case Writing, and a lot more. Currently, she is serving as an Associate Editor for Emerald Emerging Market Case Studies and Case Studies in Business and Management. She also serves as an ad hoc reviewer for ACRJ, AJMC, and EMCS. From 2015 to 2016, she was appointed as the Team Director of IBS UTM Case Clearinghouse Initiative. During this tenure, she served as the guest editor for 2 consequent issues of International Journal of Innovation and Business Strategy. She has been serving as the editorial and review board member in several reputed journals. She is also a member of several national and international professional bodies. Her current research interests includes green marketing, sustainability marketing, and corporate social responsibility. I shall now pass the floor to Dr. Farzana.
Hi, Miss Rosita. You can see my slide?
Yes, I can.
Okay, let me try to make it full screen and then you give me feedback. Is it now full screen?
Yes, Fully screen, yes.
Okay,
Over
great.
to you,
Thank you.
Doctor. All right.
Well, so first of all, thank you very much to Ms. Rosita and the whole Emerald team for inviting me to share some of my ideas and views. I am Dr. Farzana. I'm Associate Professor at Azman Hashim International Business School, UTM. And as Ms. Rosita introduced me, I'm also Associate Editor of Emerald Emerging Markets Case Studies. I actively write cases and I also review cases. So it's my pleasure to share with you some of my experiences and views and to explain some do's and don'ts about case writing as an editor, as a writer, and as a reviewer. Okay, so what I'm going to talk basically right now is basically three things. Number one is how to, or the essentials of writing a case, and then tips to write teaching notes and some do's and don'ts. Well, so before I proceed, I need to explain few basic things, For example, what is a case study? Well, there are plenty of definition and explanation, but to make it simple, case studies basically tells us the real life examples. Real life examples about either a person or an organization, about their challenges, their problems, difficulties, dilemmas that they face in their day-to-day life. And then these kind of cases can vary actually in terms of focus, in terms of length, in terms of objective. Okay, why it is needed? There are a lot of reasons, so let me highlight few basic reasons. First of all, we read basic managerial, for example, concepts, then the theories, philosophies, but we also need to know how those theories and principles and concepts works in the real life. So case actually tells us how those things can fit in the real life. Second thing is that sometimes it also happens that those theories and concept doesn't work the way it's supposed to be. So case also tells us, those deviations, and in such deviation, how the managers they handle. And another very important reason is that, the adults, the learning process is different. They like learning by debating, by questioning, by challenging, and by looking at the example. So these cases actually helps a lot in this manner. And another thing is that the scholars, academicians or non-academicians who are scholars, we also need to know, how managers they work. So these are the basic reasons that we need to have case studies. Well, another things that I need to make clear at this point that we have teaching cases, we have research cases. Well, research case, many people say article case, many people they can classify in different ways, but the basic thing is that we have two different ways. One is teaching case that we use as the pedagogical tool in our facilitating classroom learning. Another is research case that is actually case study method. So teaching case that follows the storytelling approach, whereas the research cases, it follows academic writing approach. Teaching cases, who are the audience basically? Students, managers, executives, board of directors, practitioners. On the other hand, research cases, basically academicians. Well, so these are the basic differences. There can be many more. So I show you a little bit example of one research case, like this is the one, the false promise of organizational culture change, a case study of middle managers in grocery retailing. And this is one example of one teaching case. So this is actually published in emcs. Okay, so now you can figure it out, the difference, if you see, we go to the first example, it is written very scholarly manner, very academic, lot of citations, and it's like, telling the story in a very formalized way. On the other hand, when you're looking at a case, it is like a storytelling, like it was 6 a.m. in the morning on June 10, 2010. Muhammad Akhir made a cup of coffee. So you can see that it is starting by telling a story. Okay, so these are the basic differences that we need to understand. Why I'm telling it, because as editor, as a reviewer, when I review or read any case, we sometimes actually see that some authors, they can't differentiate. They sometimes submit a case research, but actually they're supposed to submit a teaching case. So just to let you know, these are two different things. Well, you can utilize that case research, to collect the data or have some understanding, have some information. But when you want to write a teaching case, please make sure you change the style of writing, change the format of writing. Well, and one more thing I would like to highlight, that is different school of thoughts. In research, there are always some differences. It can be minor, it can be major, some differences in looking things and perceiving things, judging the value. So what I'm going to share today is basically based on emerald marking case studies, this viewpoint. So I give you a simple example. If anyone have already understanding about certain journals as a platform to publish, like ACRG, Asian Case Research Journal, published by Singapore, and it's a Scopus and ISA Index journal. So this journal, they actually prefer a little bit longer cases. On the other hand, EMCS prefer a little bit medium length cases. ACRJ, they prefer, for example, lot of background information that may or may not be directly related to the case problem. On the other hand, when it comes to EMCS, they prefer this platform paper basically somehow a little bit related, to the case problem. So that's what I'm saying. Nothing may be wrong. Both may have their own, reason for doing it. However, there's a different school of thought. So what I'm going to share today is basically the scattered to EMCS. Okay. So how to write a good case study? It's a question, right? So, well, we can share you all those, tips and do's and don'ts. However, writing is your work to do, so it varies. Okay, so I'm going to share some basics. So when it comes to writing a case study, we have to follow certain things. First of all, an interesting story to tell. What does it mean interesting? For example, if I say that Mr. Saeed woke up in the morning, he felt sad, or he was very tensed, he was in a butterfly in his stomach, that's not an interesting story. Why? Because what to do with Mr. Saeed and his butterfly in the stomach? On the other hand, if I say you like Said woke up in the morning with a bad mood, and then he was recalling back his conversation with his boss yesterday in regard to, let's say, they have the issue of their sold good return, and they need to solve it immediately. How immediately? Maybe within 2 months' time. That's an interesting story. So this is the thing. So first you should have an interesting story to tell your reader. Second is it decision focused. Let me tell you one thing. There are several kinds of cases. It can be narrative cases, it can be descriptive cases, it can be decision focused cases. For emerald, yes, to my knowledge, it accepts both descriptive and decision focus. However, if you are planning for this competition, then please keep it in your mind. It's always preferable that it has to be decision focused, problem oriented cases, because that's the thing make the reader engaged. That's the thing, tells a very much interesting story to the audience that they can relate it with their concepts and theories that they learn in the classroom. Well, and then another thing is that first page, first impression. It's very important, it's like when you see a human being and you see his face and how you feel. It gives sometimes impression, sometimes it happens. So for me, as a reviewer, as an editor, it's not first page event. For me, it is opening paragraph or first one or two paragraph. So what we're looking for here, or what you can tell here to your reader to make it some appealing story, remember to answer a few questions. First of all, who, what, where, when. Who meaning protagonist. Protagonist meaning the person who is facing this dilemma, this problem, these issues, and so forth. Second thing is that what? That means this protagonist, what problem, what issue, what dilemma he or she is facing. Then the another thing is that this is actually very important and many did missed it. When meaning when it is positioned the case problem. Let's say you're talking about one company that was established 20 years back, still it is running. But you are telling a story, particular problem of that particular company during 2018, not 2020. So that means the problem they faced 2018 may be already solved by 2020. So we need to know when your case problem is positioned. So, and the last thing I should tell that is actually where. Where meaning, is it in Malaysia? Is it in Dubai? Is it in Qatar? Is it in India? And another thing, let's say it is in Malaysia, you need to be more specific because we have 13 states here. So which state? Is it in Johor Bahru? It is in Malacca? Is it where? So be careful that when you're telling a story, you have to remember those clues, you know, those four principles that you need to tell your reader: who, what, where, and when. Well, sometimes it happens that, you know, when we read cases as a reviewer editor, so then, you know, many there are a lot of good and interesting story that the writer tells us, you know, but how they deliver does actually make a difference. Sometimes they have who and what, but they don't have where and when. It's very annoying. So please make sure that you take care of those things. Then use of tense, this another important thing. Usually we do not tell a story of future. We tell a story about past. So what we tell, what happened, or what was the problem, what was the challenge, what was the dilemma. So when we tell a story that positioned at the past, we also need to use past tense. And when you are using the past tense and we're telling a story about 2 years back, 1 year back, 6 months back, so what happened? The story flows backward. So you tell that, okay, the problem was maybe February 2020. So now the story you will not tell about March 2020. You will tell the story to the reader maybe December 2019 or maybe middle of 2019. I mean, it's related to the case problem, how far it was. Well, in regard to date is another things that you have to understand the importance. So date is like you have to give the information is similar to the tense, that when your case problem is actually positioned, after that you have to freeze all information. Okay, so you cannot tell the reader something that happened after that problem you mentioned in your write-up. Sometimes it happens that, you know, the company is still situated and is still going on and you want to tell the reader about the present day of the company situation. Now the question is, does it help? Does it help the reader to understand the case problem? We don't need to know a lot about actually the company. We need to know about the problem and when the problem was situated. So you can actually give the information about that company on that time. We don't need too much information about the present day. Okay, why? Because it's not about the company itself, it's about the problem. And we need to know about the company to understand the problem. I hope I could make you clear about this point. Okay. Another thing is that citations. Like research journals, research articles, we have a lot of citations there. You know, we have to have citation there because that shows evidence. That shows that, okay, the person did a thorough literature search. But for case, you have to understand what kind of case you're writing. Some case can be, based on primary data, basically interviews. Some cases can be based on, secondary data, so published materials. So if it is coming, the information coming from published materials, of course, you should have those, documentation from where those information came. However, how you cite, that's the important thing. So preferably, I'm not saying this is must, preferably you use footnote. So sorry, endnote. Because what happens that there's some school of thought, they feel that when you're telling a story to the reader and in between you are citing, so it can actually affect the flow of the reading. So therefore, it is preferably, that you suggested that you use endnote. So of course, don't get me wrong, you can have, and sometimes you should have the references, because that tells that figure, the diagram, the chart, you didn't produce yourself. It is actually published, or it has some authentic source. It is not produced by the author. So that's very important. But again, let me make you clear is this point. We prefer that you use footnote. But well, if you see some published cases in Emerald, you can see that there are citations. It's okay. I'm not saying it is wrong. It is no, it's not like that. It's preferable. Well, information. As I said, information can come from primary data, information can come from secondary data. So primary data basically interviews, secondary data can be published materials, or it can be both. I have many cases that I have both. What we're expecting from you as a writer, you write it down, this thing, in teaching notes. There is a section when I talk about teaching note, I'll explain a little bit there. There's a section, small section, that data collection method. So you have to explain there 2-3 sentences how and from where. So is it published? Is it primary sources? It is secondary? It is both. Okay. A structure. Well, there is no specific structure. There is no like, hard and fast rule about how it's supposed to be written. How many sections there should be. There is no such thing. For example, when we write research papers, then usually and commonly, widely, we accept there can be 5 sections like intro, literature review, methodology, findings, data analysis, and concluding remarks. For case, it's not like that at all. This structure can greatly vary from case to case. It depends on the writer's writing style and the comfort zone of the writer. So therefore, we cannot say that in a specific structure there. Well, if you want to know a little bit about basic component, yes, there are definitely intro, that is like opening, eye-opening for the reader, opening paragraph. There should be the body content, there should be conclusion. That's very pretty clear. But this content, how it flows, how many sections you want to make it, it completely depends upon actually the writers. I show here one example, the one I showed earlier. This is one case, commercialization of the coconut dehusker and defibering machine. Don't lose your courage, Muhammad Akhir. So this is actually published by MCS. So in this case, the structure we followed, you can see there Muhammad Akhir's dilemma. It is the case opening. Muhammad Akhir and his innovations. We are talking here. Actually, this case is about, let me explain a little bit about this case. Muhammad Akhir was a person who created one machine that is actually coconut dehusking defibering machine. And when he produced this machine, then this machine actually was licensed with another company with the memorandum of agreement. But after 5 years, they found that they didn't get royalty. And then at the end of the 5 years, now they are in a dilemma whether they will again continue the MOA, or they have received another actual offer from different company that they want to purchase the IPR. So now they are in a dilemma. So now this is about second part of this structure is about his innovation, discussion about the innovation he have done. Then regional coconut industry, to give a little bit scenario. and then the process of technology transfer for that particular machine, what they followed, adoption of mechanical coconut dehusking and defibering technology, and end of the fiber contract. Okay, I show another example. This is about the journey of bleach, challenges line running the family business. This is about one particular uh, uh, lady. She actually was a school teacher, but her mother, her family business, parents run the business. It was actually under a stick because her father was a cancer patient, paralyzed. Mom got cancer suddenly, and then that was a very good business, and they're getting a lot of support for running the family. So her mother actually requested her to take care of the family business. She was in a dilemma because she was enjoying her teaching job, and then she took over the business and she thought that she can run both together. However, what happened that she realized it's very difficult to handle both together. Then finally she has to quit her job. This is one dilemma already. Second thing is that when she started to run the business, she had no experience. She never actually tried to understand even before how her mother is running it. So what happened, there are a lot of mistakes she has done and going through, and then lot of problems popping up every day, and then finally she realized that she's losing the customers. So now she's thinking how she can regain the customer. So now you can see the structure: introduction, Malaysian baker industry, the marketplace, the wind of change, competitive landscape of bleach, all about bleach, Rani the pioneer, him and her challenges moving forward. So what I want to show you from these two examples, there is no specific structure. There is no specific section heading. First one was maybe 6 sections. This one has 8 sections, and the title subheadings are also different. So it completely depends upon the writer and their comfort zone and their style of writing, style of telling the story to the reader. But one thing, just keep it in your mind, it has to flow well. I mean, if you talk about, certain thing that should not come earlier, so you want to tell readers certain thing one after another to unfold the story. So that's very important. Just maintain the flow, that it is moving and flowing very well and smoothly. Okay. Another thing is that for writing a teaching case, I must explain communication style and use of the languages. When you are writing just for your class, sometimes we write case just to test in my class and not for publication. That's okay. You can actually use whatever you want to do. But if you want to submit for international audience, international platform, then you have to understand few things. First of all is the language we use. Of course, you have to write in English and make sure that you edit, you proofread the case before you submit, because it's also a bit annoying. I'm telling you, sometimes it happens that before we see the content, if we see that, it's very difficult to understand just because of the language barrier, just because it is not properly proofread, then it's already create bad impression, about the case. Another thing is important about communication of the information. So when you're trying to publish or submit an international platform, you have to make sure that the culturally very much important day-to-day cultural things you are mentioning, you have to explain for the reader who doesn't know about it. For example, if you want to talk about nasi lemak, yeah, of course, it is a Malaysian culture, but please, 1 or 2 sentences, you would have to explain what is it. If you want to say Puan Hamida, you have to mention what does it mean Puan, because for others, they may not understand what does it mean Puan. You need not to explain every time, just mention one time. That's enough. Okay. And another thing is that strategic alternatives. Strategic alternatives is like, it's good to give. I'm not saying you must, but it is good to have. So it is important for a few reasons. First of all, that it shows that it is a really interesting dilemma, because if I know clear cut what I'm supposed to do, close the company, there is nothing interesting. But if I know, no, there are alternative 2 option, then I am in a situation that I'm thinking, now what is supposed to do, which way to go. that creates something interesting, point for the reader to carry on, to understand, to ponder further. Like the one I said just now, the coconut discus defibering machine. So they have two options: either they can continue, renew the contract and give it a try again, or they can sell it their IPR to other company. So like this, you also can have some strategic alternatives to make it more interesting, make it more appealing and more critical for the reader. Critical meaning some food for thought. They will have something to think and ponder. So that's actually, you can just consider that another point. Okay. And case closing. So case closing, I just want to mention two things here. First of all, you can restate the basic main problem here again. And secondly is that sometimes some maybe case journals, they allow to have certain number of questions at the end of the case study. But for EMCS, please don't do that, because we prefer to have it in your teaching note. So you should and you can have those questions in your teaching note, but remember, not at the end of your case study if you are submitting for EMCS. Okay. So these are a little bit about case study. Now let me explain a bit about the teaching notes. It also is referred as the instructor manual by some others. Also some others, they mention it as a teaching guide. And actually, to me, I think it's a good strategy if you start working on your teaching note simultaneously, even if you start working on it earlier, you start writing your case. You need not to write the full-fledged teaching note on that time, but you should have some idea what is your topic that you are going to tell, or use this case to teach which kind of concept, which kind of theory. You should have the understanding. You need to know also who are your target audience. Is it the bachelor, undergrad? Is it a postgrad? Because it also varies, the level of intensity, level of the dilemma, level of the strength, alternative strategies actually varies based on your, whether it's undergrad audience, it is for postgrad audience. So that's also you need to understand. And another thing is that objective, learning objective. So if you are not clear about the learning objective at the point, when you want to write the case, it's very difficult. Then it will be story without teaching value. So what does it mean without teaching value? So there are a lot of stories, very interesting to read, but you cannot use it to facilitate your classroom learning. It is maybe interesting to read it or spend some time with your student, but you never know what concept you are going to teach using this case, what learning objective you are going to achieve using this case. So therefore, a basic few things you should have in your mind or jot it down before you start writing your case, so that both can go together. Otherwise, as I said, it will be a story, nice story without teaching value. Well, synopsis. Okay, so then now I'm going to show you some basic component of your teaching note. Synopsis, please give a brief summary of the case, problem, the protagonist, where it happened, when it happened, and so on and so forth. And as I said, you should have a learning objective. So for EMCS, it's better if you have between 3 to 5 learning objective. You don't need to have too many, and you should not have too less. So it is optimum 3 to 5. And then you should have, you should write target audience. As I said, is it for undergrad? Is it for postgrad? You also need to mention a little bit about what theory or what concepts, relevant with this case. And data collection method. Data collection method, as I said you earlier, that what kind of data you use, primary source, secondary source, or both. Teaching plan, that is something that actually tells the reader that is basically for instructors. how they can administer the case, how they can use this case in their classroom. Of course, they can have their own way, but it is good to give them some suggestion and tips, especially for the new teachers, who are started to just teach. And another thing is that assignment questions. Yes, it is also important to have certain questions that will be related to this case, not other case. That will be related to either this company problem or this protagonist problem or something. Sometimes we get some question like, let's say it is about CSR question, then the question is very general. What is CSR? What are the attributes of CSR? Please don't do this kind of silly mistake, because this kind of questions you don't need to read the case. You can Google and you can get lot of answer. So when you are formulating the question, please make sure that somehow, not necessarily it has to be very critical all question, no, but somehow it will be related to the protagonist or the company. And yes, you have to provide some suggested answers, because it's not only enough to highlight some questions. You also need to give some suggested answers based on the case information provided in the case narrative. Okay, so these are the basic points that you can consider when you are writing your teaching note. Okay, now a little bit about some do's and don'ts, more specifically for this case competition or EMCS. Some do's: the case should have teaching value. As I said, if it is an interesting story, it's a nice story, but it doesn't have teaching value, we don't know what concept is actually being covered here, what theory we can use, or what learning objective you can achieve, then it is actually a story without a teaching value. Should tell a real story. We don't like or we don't want fictional cases. Fictional cases actually also with no teaching value, because that is not real life problem. It is a man-made story. You should have an interesting story to tell. Interesting meaning, as I said, if you're talking about one particular person, nothing interesting, what he's doing from morning. But if it is related to somehow a particular problem, managerial decision-making problem, then it is interesting. There should be decision-making dilemma. Okay, so we want to see certain decision-making dilemma. First of all, it makes the reader engaged for the adult learning. It helps them to think more. It helps us to relate with the concepts and theories we are reading, whether it working or not working. So this is very important. Should consider a neutral perspective while telling the story is very important. What happens sometimes? Some writers, they are so enthusiastic about telling some success story of certain company. Well, that is maybe different focus. But if you're writing a decision focused problem oriented case, then if you want to talk about particular company, make sure you are very neutral in your writing, choice of words, choice of sentences. Let's say I'm giving a simple example. If I say you that he's a bad person, so how I can believe your claim he's a bad? Then I have to tell he lies, he steals, he doesn't keep his promises. Okay, so the person is bad. Similarly, same goes to the case writing. If I say that company was very famous company, or for example, it is very much established, well-reputed company, how I'll believe what you're saying? You have to give me example. For example, you can say it got maybe award, or maybe it was like doing good. No need award. You can show me the sales. You can tell something is good, doing great, is earning. It is has a high rate of return. So whatever it is you're writing, just give fact and figure. Give some information that will actually help the reader to understand whether it was good or bad. So okay, that's one thing. And then should provide teaching note, should obtain consent form for the company. Okay, that's very important. We have a requirement that you should obtain a consent to publish form from that particular company. Someone has to sign. No need to have the letterhead from that company. We have in Emerald their own form. You just need to have the signed from someone authority from that company. And of course, you have to edit or proofread before you submit. Don'ts, well, do not write fictional case. Yeah, I want to emphasize again. Do not write descriptive case for this particular competition. Do not be biased. Yes, you have to take a neutral standpoint when you're telling the story. So it is reader's choice. They will, make a judgment whether they want to think it is a good, it is a bad, it is, quite reputed or not. So it is their choice. Do not provide assignment questions at the end of the case narrative, but you should provide it in teaching note. And do not provide solution of the problem in the case, because the solution will come teaching note. Okay, that is the place where you can give lot of suggestions, explanation, examples, but not in the case itself. A few more relevant thing, I just want to explain a little bit for the review process. What happens is it's a blind review. We follow blind review process. That means reviewer cannot see who is the writer and writer cannot see who is the reviewer. So we follow blind review process for making it more objective in nature. Okay. And when you receive any feedback from the reviewer, please make sure that you address each comment by the reviewer. And if you do not want to address certain, maybe one or two comments, you should explain thoroughly. And another thing is that show that you put an effort to address all those, review feedback. And we have a table format. If you get review feedback, the table will be attached with the email. So this looks like this. So you have to list down all the feedback, and the right side you have to explain what we have done to address those feedback. Concluding remark, there is no one specific way to write a good case. There are some basic guidelines, basic expectations, basic rules we follow, but there is no specific way to write a case. And of course, there is no best case because it's very subjective. If one school of thought, this is certain case, and another school of course, they may have some mismatch. So there's no best case actually. How we learn writing teaching cases? You can learn by reading good cases, publishing good journals. Also, you can learn by your own mistakes, and getting the review feedback is a very good learning point. When you get review feedback, is a very good learning point. Don't take it negatively. If your reviewer say that it is not written well, it is not good, blah blah blah, try to see what was the message, what you're supposed to do to improve it, and that's how we improve a lot. And another thing, you can actually improve by writing with one experienced case writer. I actually learned case writing from my supervisor, and I'm thankful to her. Alhamdulillah, I was doing my doctorate, and in a class, she used case writing as the teaching method, writing and analysis. So this is how I started in 2006, learning case, and I started published case 2010. My first case was published. Okay. So this is actually, there are two links for you for the quiz competition. One is from Malaysian participant and another from Mina. So all are available in the online, I believe. If you have any questions about quiz competition, you can of course discuss with Ms. Rosita as well. Okay. With that, I thank you and end my discussion here. So it's now your turn to write the story and tell the story to the reader. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farzana, for the insights on learning how to write a successful case study and engaging students with real-life business cases. We have had some questions posted by the participants, so we're going to have a few minutes. I will read out some of the questions, and I welcome you, Dr. Farzana, to answer them. The first one is from Lai Cafe. What happens if the respondent does not agree to use his company name for the case study?
Okay. You want me to answer now?
No, that means I will ask one question and then you answer, and then we will go through the rest.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So this one actually, I thought you will have the question and session at the end, but you want me to explain now, right? Okay. So actually, well, EMCS, we take actually disguised cases, but not fictional cases. So there's a difference between disguised case and fictional case. Fictional case meaning I have some idea and I'm writing a story, you know, and there is no such company in reality. That is fictional case, and that's completely no for EMCS. I think no platform they like this kind of thing. But disguise case meaning you have a real company, but it's just that, and we understand that many companies, they don't mind to share the story, but they mind to share their name. It happens with some companies, yes. In that case, you can actually disguise the name of the company. However, when you give the consent letter, that has to be the real. Okay, so you can disguise, because consent letter nobody will see. It is for only EMCS record, you know, administration and the editors, only they can see. It's just for that EMCS their record. But you can disguise the name in the case story.
Okay. Next one is from Yun Lee. What are the significance of naming Mat Akhir? Storytelling technique?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand once again.
What are the significance of naming Mat Akhir? So just now, in your slides just now, you were mentioning a person's name, Muhammad Akhir. Is it a storytelling technique?
Well, is it you mean in the case to provide the name of the protagonist, is it?
In the slides, in the earlier slides you have just now, you were giving some examples, and one of
Right.
those were naming a person. So
Okay.
yeah, was that one
Okay.
of the technique of case
We
writing?
call it protagonist. Okay, so when you're talking about a protagonist in that case, that means that you actually helping the reader to visualize the situation, because you have to understand, when you start reading a case, we are blank, we have no idea what you're going to tell us. So you are the storyteller, so you have to give us certain information that will help me to visualize, that will help me to understand the situation. So if you do not tell us who is facing the problem, now who can be a protagonist, that is a human being, so we have to give a name, because it helps us. It helps us to understand. Let's say if I say Muhammad Akhir, already I know it is a guy, okay, and it's a Malay Muslim person. If I say Mr. Chua, so I already know it's a Chinese, and he as a guy, you know. So when you tell the name, it gives you some impression, some understanding about the reader, about that protagonist. Secondly, you also need to give certain information, not only the name. You also need to give a little bit information in, but it depends on the case problem. If you're talking about certain case problem like OB, organization behavior, maybe, or maybe you're talking about a problem that is actually focusing to 5 big personality, for example, handling the motivation, then you have to give lot more information about that particular protagonist. But if it is marketing case or something different, you know, there's nothing to do much about the personality characteristics, then you can just tell the age, for example, certain thing, you know, he is graduated, the education background a little bit. So those things helps us to understand. You try to understand. Let's say I'm talking about a person who is a Malay Muslim, is 40, and I'm talking about one Indian boy whose age is maybe, you know, 20 years old and less experienced. So how these two person will make a choice, that should be different. They will make a choice differently. Their age is different, their race is different, their perception is different. So if we don't tell all those things, even if we talk about a girl or a lady, a woman, you know, a woman entrepreneur, let's say she is maybe 35 years old and she is maybe a Chinese. So you have to understand those things actually helps the reader to understand the characteristics, to make a judgment, make a conscious choice, and to understand why she did that, what she can do. So those things are interrelated. So therefore, we need a little bit of information about the protagonist, the name, age, educational background, because if you are educated, if you're not educated, also can make a difference in your making of your decision and choices that you can make. Okay.
Next is by Marcela Hanasi. Should the students' learning goals be stated in a teaching case study?
Well, good question. What we write learning objective. Okay, we have a section at the beginning that we have learning objective. So learning objective actually telling us what kind of objective the students can achieve, by reading or analyzing this case. Yes, it is a must component to put it in your teaching note. And to make it more clear, it's good if you can follow those kind of taxonomy tools, like one of the very famous one is Bloom's taxonomy. So the main essence is that you can order your objective and the questions from very much based on very much simple one to much critical one. So it's important. Yes.
All right, thank you. By Laith Hadidi, how to prove credibility of the practitioners as experts in their field. And if you have a single case study, how would you validate results to generalize findings to similar other cases?
Okay, I answer one by one. The first one is how to prove credibility of the practitioners as experts in their fields. Actually, when I do not know exactly what you want to ask here by saying the credibility of the practitioners, in which aspect, okay? But to me, those questions are very much suitable for actually research cases. When this case study method we use as the method to collect data, analyze the data, answer the research question. For example, the second question, if you have a single case study, so when we write case, teaching cases, these are basically single case. We do not talk about multiple cases. So if you have multiple cases, you can have series of cases, case 1, case 2, case 3. So usually when you're submitting a case for this kind of teaching case we call, so this is actually single case. And how it validate? We do not generalize any finding here. If you are actually referring to qualitative in a study, even if you read Yin or some other Sharon Maram and all those qualitative experts who actually write cases, and you can learn more from their books. Yin is one of the very famous, he's one of the very best-selling book, I think. So actually, we do not generalize when you do qualitative study, first of all. Yes, we can have a conclusion. We can make a conclusion based on those things. We can have some, concrete assumptions, but we do not generalize basically. And moreover, when we're writing teaching case, we are not trying anything to generalize actually. We're trying to learn from real life experience, real life example, how one particular concept works in this kind of situation, or how this theory fits in or doesn't fit in real life situation. Okay, so we are not trying to generalize anything. This is for basically a research case that we use case study as the teaching method. Data collection method or qualitative method.
Okay. The last two. Okay. How to, from Amal I. Saleh, how to build a solid data collection tool. What things that we must consider?
How
to build a solid data collection tool. What are the things that we must consider?
When we collect data for writing a case actually, so you have to remember that all information should be related to the case problem, to build the case problem. So sometimes it also can happen that one time collection data is not sufficient. Sometimes we have to go maybe to interview the protagonist maybe more than one time, because first time we came, or you can do like this, you can have a team and different person of the team can take care of different aspect, you know. So because it is like and it also depends on experience. The more and frequently you write a case, collect the data for this, so first time you do some mistakes and you take care of those mistakes in the next time. So first of all, of course, what kind of information, of course it will vary case to case, but in general we need information about the company itself, because you need to tell a story a little bit about the company, because the protagonist is a part of that company. We need information of the protagonist itself, his education background, his age, his um, experience with that particular company, or previously he worked somewhere else in a similar company, those kind of information. You need information about the industry overall a little bit, because that company is a player of that industry, it is not outside that industry. So you sometimes need to compare and contrast also, especially when you're doing marketing cases. We need to give a lot of information about competitors, we need to give a lot of information about the customers, because this is the nature of marketing. But when you're doing management core cases, maybe it is less, not too much about competitors, not too much about the customers. However, you still need a little bit information about the industry itself. You also need information about a little bit about the, not little bit, greatly about the problem itself, when it started, how it started, and what kind of problem it created, and things like that. So yeah, you have to have a little bit of overall understanding, and you should jot down those things before you go for the field study. So it is for basically primary data. When you write a case based on your primary data, that's basically interviews.
Okay, thank you. And the final one, how long should a good case study be? What is the optimum length?
Good question. It varies. If you are submitting different platforms, they may have different requirement. As I said, from my experience, SCRJ, they prefer a little bit longer cases. But EMCS, if you're targeting EMCS actually, it is medium length. Let's say 8 to 12 pages roughly. We don't like too big case, we don't like too short case, so because you have to understand that don't make it too boring for the reader, and don't make it too short that no information, not sufficient information. So again, if you want to try submit different platform, you have to keep it in your mind the preference for different platform. But for EMCS, we prefer medium length, not too short, not too long, and give sufficient information for the reader to understand, but don't make it too boring. Okay, so those are the things. I cannot say exactly 9 page, I cannot say exactly 8, you just follow something 8 to 12, 13, there's plus minus always there, something like that.
Right, okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Farzana. There are a lot more questions actually from the floor, but we will take this one separately. So thank you again for answering all the questions from the floor. For all the participants, if you do have any further questions, you can email us later. Now we shall move to the next session, Cases Learning Hub. We have our colleague based in the UK, and her name is Carla Witcombe. Carla will bring you to explore the Cases Learning Hub and run through the case competition that are running at the moment. So I shall now pass that to Carla.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to be here. Thank you so much, Dr. Farzana. That was really interesting, and it kind of sets me up for what I wanted to talk about today, because if we think about all of that information that you just received then, the lots and lots of really thorough information, what we've tried to do is pull all of the basics and foundations of how you should approach writing a case and teaching a case as well, and put them into our Cases Learning Hub. So there's just a little bit of information about that on the screen now. So these are free online training resources, as we said, to try and encourage you to write and teach amazing cases. There's a series of 7 modules, and 7 modules split into 21 smaller modules. They're really interactive and engaging, and the idea is to kind of share some of the best practice that we've learned from all of our editors and associate editors and reviewers along the last 10 years of publishing cases, and bring some of that to the Learning Hub. You can access it 24/7 and you can save your progress as well. So we started out about 18 months ago, about 1.5 years ago, looking at writing cases, and we pulled together these 4 larger modules which kind of go through the whole process of writing a case, right from identifying what you might want to write about, right through to best practice in terms of getting that case published. So here are some of the screenshots. I will take you onto the platform as well so that you can have a look, but this is just to demonstrate the way that the hub works. It's got lots of video information, lots of visual information. We've tried to keep the amount of text minimal so that you can kind of go through and learning without having to read a lot at the same time as well. We then moved on about just over a year ago to add how to teach those cases to the portfolios as well. So we opened it up more widely. Our first teaching case section is largely delivered by our 2 editors, so Michael Goldman, who's the editor of EMCS, and Rebecca Morris, who's the editor of the case journal TCJ. But these modules on teaching cases are much more wide. There's much more worldwide experience in there as well. So we pulled on some more resources from people to make those a little bit more applicable as well. So again, here's some examples, and I'll show you properly on the platform as well of what the kind of interactive sessions that we've tried to use to try and make it a bit more fun and a bit more interesting for you to work through. And we've just added in the last 2 months a brand new module on teaching online. So we know that the majority of teaching happens or did happen in that traditional classroom environment, but with the current pandemic and the different ways of working that everybody is experiencing, we are noticing a lot of educators now delivering online classes, and we wanted to try and create something to support those faculty and those professors who are new to this and are looking for ways in which they can improve the way that they teach and how they can do that online as well. So it covers core issues, so the benefits of teaching online, how to select the right case study to teach online, obviously thinking about some cases being maybe too long, or some cases maybe having more dilemmas that you could discuss online, just different techniques that you can make them adaptable to your online lesson, and the challenges that you might face. So we know that there can be issues with engaging students anyway in the classroom environment, so sometimes that can become more apparent online. So thinking of ways that you can try and make sure that the teaching online is just as robust as it is in the classroom. So I just wanted to take you onto the platform here. So here I'm signed in, and as I mentioned in the opening slide, it is free for everybody. You just need to register a profile, and then you can go on and start accessing the material. Once you've registered and logged in, you'll be land on this library page here, and this has got all of the different modules that we go through. Just wanted to point out there's a new useful resources section here that we've just added in the last week. And this has got lots of information that we get asked for, or our publishing team get asked for as part of people submitting to competitions like these or writing cases generally. So for example, we've got webinars like these that you can go back and rewatch. We've got some sample cases and teaching notes here. So if I click into those, you can click on those and you can access the case itself, and then you can also access what that teaching note should look like as well, so that it gives you a sample to work from. We've also got information on rights and permissions. We get lots of questions on that, and we've got more top tips for teaching online as well. So that's just a section that you can access at any point, just to kind of refresh your memory about the process of submitting as well. So I'll just go into the teaching a case study section here, and I'll click into preparing to teach a case study. So this is probably my favourite module here, this one on preparing your case study lesson. So as I wait for this to load, Michael Goldman, the EMCS editor, actually filmed some of his classes as part of this to help pull together a bit of a real life lesson plan. So these are a series of questions that you can ask yourself. So you watch the video on the right hand side, which is a mix of Michael there either talking you through how you would select a case study, and then it's snippets of him in the classroom and how that actually works in reality. So each of those, so here about structuring a lesson, so he talks about the things that you can do to kind of make it flow, you know, thinking about the teaching notes of the case that you are using, and then you type in the information here in the box and you keep working through there, so thinking about how you want your students to contribute. And obviously the room layout, tools and resources, so that's something we might need to think about in the future if things are different. And then at the end of this, you've got the opportunity to download your responses here. So everything that you've typed into these boxes is pulled into this response, which you can download and save. And there you've got your lesson plan ready for you. So if I come out of that, and I'll just go into facilitating in the classroom. So again, we've tried to make it logical. So firstly, you're preparing your case study, and then this is how you facilitate in the classroom, so when you're actually teaching. And this is on encouraging deep thinking. So one of the things we have tried to think about a lot when pulling all of the material together in the Learning Hub is the student experience and their point of view. So this is all built around what your students, the way your students might react, and how you can, as it says here, encourage them to think more critically or more deeply about the case and the material that they're studying. So there's a little bit of information about the case, and then we go through different students and hear how they're responding to the case. And then once you've heard what they have to say, you type your response in here. And then there's a model answer here for you to go through as well. And there's a couple of examples of those. Okay, and then I'll just show you teaching cases online. This is a series of FAQ videos. So as I mentioned, this is probably quite interesting and important for a lot of people at the moment to work out how to take all of their skills and practices of teaching in the classroom and move that online. So you would simply click on these, whichever question that you're looking for the answer at that time. So you might want to think about the challenges, so you would click on this one, and there's a video which features a series of different presenters talking about how they overcome those challenges and things that you might want to think about. So that's a really good resource at the moment for people who are moving their practice online. And finally, I'll just take you into the writing a case study section. So again, this is very much designed right from a foundation. So if you've never written a case before, this is a really good place for you to start, and we go through all of the different steps of that process. However, if you have written a lot of cases before and you are experienced, there's probably still a lot that you can get out of this final section on evaluating your case study, as that's all about best practice for submission and actually getting your case published as well. But as I mentioned, it's really, really useful for people who are new, haven't written for a while, and new to the practice of case writing, because it takes you through that whole journey. So identifying a need, if I just click into this, this is all about why write a case study. So it's very much about the kind of information that Dr. Farzana was sharing right at the beginning of her presentation there around the value, why it's different from a research case. All of that information is here, and there's kind of an introduction to how you might go about writing case studies and the benefit of writing a case study, and what that will enable you to do with your students and their learning opportunities. So that's some information about that in identifying a need. And if I go through to getting ready to write, so this here, I'll just click on this. I know that Dr. Farzana mentioned about Bloom's taxonomy. So we have tried to create a bit of an interactive diagram here for you to use Bloom's taxonomy to think about the learning outcomes that you want to include within your teaching notes and within the case more generally. So here is the overview of Bloom's taxonomy, and you can select the image like this and make it larger, or you can click out of that. Or you can click through here and look at your audience. So you might know that you want to write for undergraduate, for postgraduate early stage, or for a postgrad higher level. And in that case, you would click, for example, I'll go here to postgraduate early stage. And there you can see the higher order thinking that is promoted within Bloom's taxonomy. So you would be in this section here thinking about analysing and applying. That's what you want your students to do as a result of working through your case. And there's some information about what that means for that level. And there's also a verb chart here as well. So here's some words that you might want to include within your cases and your learning outcomes in order to achieve those. So applying and analysing things like choose, solve, model, identify, apply, plan. These are all the things that to use to ensure that you're pitching that at the right level and you're encouraging your students to be applying that knowledge, and then over here obviously analysing that knowledge as well. And there's practicing here as well, so you can go through and you can look at which verbs are appropriate and what you would use for that level. And then there's a list of, you can see a card as well. So there's different visual options of how to use that. And then you can download a PDF with all of the ways of developing the learning outcomes as well. So this is a really useful module as well on developing learning outcomes and thinking about using some of that theory to go into your teaching note in particular. Okay. So once you've identified the need and you're kind of getting ready to write and you're pulling all of your information and you're thinking about the learning outcomes that you want to have as a result of this, we kind of go into how to write the case study itself. So we go through, you know, structuring your narrative, then thinking about the discussion questions that you might want to ask, thinking again about what Dr. Farzana just mentioned around making sure that those are kind of challenging enough that they can't just find out the information, but they have to have analysed that case properly, and then preparing a teaching plan as well. So if I just click into structuring your narrative there. So this is quite a typical screen on the Learning Hub, which is that you get the information here. So you get a little bit of a snippet into what the video or the material will include, and then as always, there's always a time limit as well, so how long this would take an average person to complete. And so in here we've got Michael Goldman talking about how you would structure your narrative as part of your case. And then you've got key points here as well. So you click each of these when you've kind of confirmed. So here we're thinking about your topic in particular. Does your topic start and end with the dilemma, and does it include the vital context to help students? And so you tick those, and then you can just move through. Either you can move through the modules by clicking this right arrow here, or you can exit course and go back to the beginning as well. It's totally up to you. If I just exit course, I'll just show you how you might want to go through it. So you can always like and bookmark these as well, so that if you're working through modules and you want to come back to something, or there's a particular module that you want to go through when you're a little bit further down either the process of writing or when you're ready to teach, you can bookmark that and it'll save that in this dashboard section here for you to come back to. So when you log back in, that will be what you can see, and you can easily go back to it. Okay, so I will just jump back into the slides now. As I mentioned, if you've got any questions about the Learning Hub, or if you've got anything you want to know, please do get in touch. Right at the bottom of the screen here is the URL for you to use to log in, and we can share that as well. So if you are kind of new to cases, do log in, register a profile, and have a look around, and kind of hopefully it will be useful for you. But yeah, please do let me know if you've got any questions. And I just wanted to kind of mention again the case writing competitions that we have running at the moment. So we've got these two case writing competitions. So we've got the Malaysia Emerald case writing competition, which is accepting submissions until the September 28th. An AUC School of Business case study competition, which is accepting submissions until October 18. So there is time to still submit to case writing competitions. There's links there to the pages that will give you information about the submission criteria and the award process and everything like that if you'd like to find out more information. But hopefully that's inspired you to write for our competitions and find out more about how that works.
Yes,
I don't know, are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you, Carla, for a nice run through of the Cases Learning Hub and also reminders for the cases competition, the KCC, and also the Malaysia case competition. I hope everyone have had a good and informative session. We are all here to help. If you need any further information or assistance in writing your case studies. Like I mentioned previously, all information will be shared via the post-webinar email, which you will receive soon. Thank you again to Dr. Farzana for sharing her insights from the Associate Editor's perspective. Dr. Farzana have kindly shared a document titled Essentials of Writing a Good Case Studies, and it is actually in the handout section on this webinar, but we will also be sharing that in the post-webinar email. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you everyone, participants, for your time with us today, and we hope to have you again at our future sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farzana. Bye.
Bye.